I have a weird rapport with Natural Born Killers. I think I rather, or highly, disliked it upon first viewing, though gradually grew to generally appreciate it more over time, just due to how unusual and oddball the thing obviously is. Though I never found myself really loving it, or among its ardent fans, say. If I disliked it upon first viewing, it was a knee jerk reaction to its particular quasi gimmicky style, and the fact that it was seemingly finger wagging and trying to make a point about the media, which was a parroted talking point when I was a teen and into my early adulthood. It may have been far more relevant and apt during the era of the film's initial release, when television dominated everything, pre internet, when the public really was dependent on the talking heads within that box. I appreciated more most now because I can just watch it as frenzied entertainment, less interested in any profundity it has to share, and also because it does serve now as an intriguing time capsule to the pre 9/11, pre internet, television dominated end of history epoch of the 1990s. It is the kind of film that was an apotheosis of the taboo busting priorities of artists at that time, and also what was perceived derided as reckless and adolescent by the early 21st century, and certainly during the social media governed epoch of the 2010s onward. The 90s was a time when seemingly you could be as edgy and express yourself free of be as edgy as possible and express yourself free of shame before the vacuum of the early 21st century and the zeitgeist busting or defining moments of that decade, the 2000s, demanded that a new purpose beyond pissing off suburban prudes be pursued. If the 90s culturally was moved on from because people became bored or overexposed to it, that can be understood and justified, for those who demand it ought to be locked away and scorned for and by posterity. I would take an issue with that, because corralling culture is an inevitable conductor of boredom, and I'm a fierce opponent of the spectre of boredom. It really must be said, though, the film is more amorally or snidely assessing the media than enacting a truly moral principle. Otherwise, it wouldn't glibly act as a stylized venture about two on the run killers slash lovebirds. It's like if Bonnie and Clyde was also trying to critique the excesses of violence within cinema. It's like, well, why are you doing it too? Just to show that you're all in the shit? Natural Born Killers might claim that it isn't taking a moral stance, so much as pointing out that its decriers, the public morality brigades, at least in the media ecosystem, aren't so ethical as they may claim, for it kind of is taking a moral stance, or at least identifying Mickey and Mallory as likable or enjoyable figures. And if the audience is to be subjected to a fundamental critique that they too participate in the media circus of rank amorality via choosing to enjoy the behaviour of Mickey and Mallory on screen, it is the film itself which chooses to glorify or aesthetize them in the first place. So how can the audience be solely the subjects of scorn from the filmmakers? It makes zero sense, obviously. I feel bad expressing any praise, though it is measured, of this film, because I once had a very dynamic and entertaining commenter, Honky Tonk Screonkadonk. Screonk is a reference to how the Dark Horse comics of Godzilla would spell Goji's roar as written onomatopoeia. I remember the commenter seemed impressed I was able to figure that out, but well, new tab, Google. I wish I was that cultured to just know that, but alas. This commenter mentioned once how they utterly detested this film. I seem to remember them saying they found it to be pretentious, obnoxious, and overbearing, and that they didn't like Oliver Stone, particularly as he wrote the script for the 1982 Conan the Barbarian film, which he, as a great admirer of Robert Howard's original novels, felt was a grave disservice to the widely liked character. I myself was not aware of the dearth between text and film where Conan was concerned, I have to admit. And NBK only doubly confirmed that for him in the 90s. He said he heard of the film when he, with a shaved head, tattoos, and perhaps also sunglasses, browsing a video rental shop or something, had some girl point at him and remark aloud to her accompanying boyfriend, "Hey, Natural Born Killers!" He figured, if I remember right, he may as well watch the film. Not only did he immensely dislike the film, he felt a bit confused that someone who thought he looked like a ruthless murderer, Woody Harrelson's Mickey Knox, would excitedly approach him and exclaim his resemblance to that character. I'm going to forgive someone's dislike for the film for whatever reason they have, as I'm still not a great lover over it, though when I watched it recently, Had a double feature held in Annandale, a screening before Lumet's mighty classic Dog Day Afternoon. I had a good time with it, and I'll be attending these events again in future. I had an excellent time at the occasion in general. I do have a mixed response to Stone's films, and I feel sad expressing that because I like Stone in interviews. He seems like a relatively interesting political figure who has said some pretty brave things on television in the past. I don't think anyone can deny that. But I find his films to be, on the whole, just not very good. But what about JFK? JFK is the exception to the rule. Terrific film, I won't disagree with that. Platoon is overrated schmaltz, in my opinion, too Hollywood for me. I have the same complaints with Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan about a decade later. And I do feel bad saying that. I've said this many times on the channel before, as Stone was a vet for that war, and obviously the likes of Coppola or Kubrick or De Palma weren't and made obviously superior Vietnam War films. But I have to honestly assess these films as if I didn't know anything about the filmmakers in question. Otherwise, we'd excuse ourselves from offering any praise to Griffith's seemingly progressive films, such as Intolerance, The Masterpiece, or even the still troubling in ways Broken Blossoms, or anything Polanski directed Tess onward, which some still hesitate to do, myself included at times, frankly. I say Salvador from Oliver Stone may be his closest feature at achieving genuine masterpiece status, but the presence of Jim Belushi really hurts it, and comes close to ruining it outright. Then, none of Stone's films after Natural Born Killers I like or find appealing enough to even watch initially, although I'll offer some admission of enjoyment to his earlier trashier features, and they are shameless, well made for what they are. He does have technical chops, I'll give him that much, and likeable if you're at all fond of what they are. That is 1974's Seizure and 1981's The Hand, starring Michael Caine in a movie he probably doesn't appreciate being mentioned if he were doing an interview. So that's my stance on Natural Born Killers. I think I first became aware of it as a Tarantino project that was ultimately helmed by another director, as True Romance was. Though obviously Tony Scott's feature still felt entirely like a Tarantino film in a way that Natural Born Killers kind of doesn't. And had it been one of Tarantino's own films, it would be considered his most different, whereas A True Romance would just blend right in with the rest of them. There's also From Dusk Till Dawn, actually, which he wrote and also co-starred in. I'm very fond of that one, have been since I saw it at age 14 or so. That may also be considered different or very genre for Tarantino, but still perhaps not as much so as Natural Born Killers would be perceived, as were it amongst Tarantino's directorial oeuvre. The screening was held at the Between Two Worlds studio in Annandale, Sydney, during the evening after the business itself had closed for the day. They will be holding more double features in future. Apparently they advertise and promote on Facebook, but I don't use Facebook, so I can't confirm where to find it there. I found out about it by happenstance. Very glad I purchased tickets a month ago and couldn't attend a couple of other events on the same night, as I met some outstanding people, watched two wholly engaging films, especially the latter film, which will be the next I discuss for this program, and have a venue to potentially attend more screenings out in the near future. I think I shall close it here. Thank you everyone for listening, if you have. I wish you all great happiness and peace.